Verticality is an interesting aspect of Night City. There are absolutely elements of Cyberpunk 2077 that embody this original vision to have multiple layers throughout Night City, where things can be a little bit confusing, a little bit disorientating, and really showcase that in real life, a city to this size and this density would probably end up building upwards. However, there are a good amount of locations in Night City which showcase that verticality was never quite implemented. Today I'm going to be blowing your minds even further by showing you some more cut verticality. And it's funny because I actually made this as a video 2 years ago, and this was really the first Cyberpunk cut content video that got a little bit of views and kind of showed to me that other people actually find this stuff interesting. This location is mostly concerned with this gigantic footbridge which is crossing over a huge motorway in Night City. Funnily enough, this can actually be found pretty close to the North Oaks Casino. In fact, you can kind of see the boundaries of where it lays. And if you look on the game's map, you can see that we are very much on the cusp of North Oaks. Is that a coincidence? I think not. On one hand, this can absolutely be seen as simple set dressing. You are driving down this huge M25 knockoff and you see this big green bridge above you. Some of it is disappearing off behind walls. Some of it is going out of bounds where you can't see and you never will be able to see. However, with this one, if you were to use no clip and actually fly up here, you can see that there is very much a usable interior. If we start off in the middle of this bridge, first of all, you can notice that you get some really nice views of Night City. One of the most criminal parts of the cut vertical content is just how beautiful and dynamic the sights of Night City can be. All of these perspectives on the game world which are just kind of doomed to sit and rot and never quite be appreciated. This is absolutely one of those times, and I mean, just by looking at some of the sights from this, it's absolutely urban heaven. So anyways, on this pedestrian bridge you will notice that there's a few quirks, like some of the flooring which doesn't quite seem to overlap properly. You can see down here that the two textures are flickering, and from my time building the North Oaks Casino with AMM, I know for a fact that this is when two textures are overlapping, which could explain why there's a big gap here. This was either intended to be fixed, further into development, or CDPR never wanted us to be up here. However you look at it, it's pretty weird that there are props all the way around this area which aren't actually interactable. They don't have collision either. So look at that however you will. Now, one of the most interesting places regarding this pedestrian footbridge is to the left of where we just were, and you can see just how huge this pedestrian bridge is. This is just one side of the bridge, and eventually this bridge takes us to a building. This building here actually has a set of double doors with a green light above it. There is now a barrier just at the entrance to the end of this pedestrian bridge. It's invisible, but it stops you from going any further. But if you manage to edge yourself close enough to this set of double doors, you can see that they will actually open. This is pretty interesting because we have a set of usable double doors which exist entirely out of the playable area, and also pretty coincidentally tie up with this building right about here. Now, this building is not used for anything. This is one of your soft system buildings which have a really unique and interesting design, but don't have any kind of interior or any sort of purpose in the game's world. Now, you can look at this in any way you want. Maybe there was supposed to be an interior here. This is also, further complicated by one of the E3 areas. So one of the first missions where you're going with Jackie to rescue the lady in the bathtub. When you come out of the apartment and trauma team land, you're presented in a pretty similar environment to where we are at the moment, where you have this kind of slice of life verticality aspect to give this, I would say personally, a false sense of verticality and complexity to Night City, which was obviously developed for E3 purposes. But you can see that there's a lot of these similar pedestrian footbridges in the distance, and what's interesting is that if you no-clip up to these, they have a similar sort of thing where the ends of the footbridges result in these double doors which open onto nothing. I don't know if this is something to do with maybe the style, maybe the prefab of these pedestrian bridges, or alternatively if maybe at some point in time CDPR expected all of these footbridges to lead to interiors, hence why they all have usable doors at the end. But that's just blind, baseless speculation. You can call me a fucking heathen, but I don't know, man, it seems pretty reasonable. So going back to our pedestrian footbridge and going the opposite direction, we can see that it kind of bends down in these duplicated walkways, almost as if they were designed as kind of like a, you know, entrance and an exit for pedestrians. And however you want to look at this, it's pretty interesting that we have all of this unusable and mostly unviewable architecture. What's made even more confusing by this whole predicament is that we get a load of these metal barriers which prevent us from going even further. So although this location is entirely outside of the playable area, you will never be able to get here organically. CDPR still decided to put in these barriers to stop the player going further. And behind these barriers are, interestingly, nothing. This is actually where the pedestrian footbridges go and despawn into these kind of dead zones of Night City, which you do get around spaces sometimes. So that covers the North Oaks footbridge. It's pretty interesting, and this is just kind of part one of two, because there's a little bit more which I want to show you. We have another pedestrian footbridge, similar style, similar shape, similar complexity, but this one is arguably even more confusing because it looks like it should 100% be usable. Now, I was scouring through this place trying to find some kind of entrance, because this is pretty close to ground level. This is perfectly visible even from just up here, right? So it would make absolute sense for there to be at least some part of it that's enterable. So this is one of the beginnings of the footbridge. You can see that we have the similar chain link fence, which has now actually blocked the view as opposed to blocking the end of the tunnel. Don't know why that has been put in place, but anyhow, if we were to follow this round, we again get some pretty interesting views of Night City. Not quite as nice as the other ones, but we can follow this all the way up here. And you can see that this place is massive, it's complicated, it veers in multiple different directions. This is also the end of one of the pedestrian footbridges, which actually comes out onto kind of like a little rooftop area with some rubbish, with some pretty basic props. You can do some pretty basic parkouring as well, if I could actually position. You can sort of get around this area, and it does beg the question, maybe this was supposed to be used for something, because you can probably quite easily climb all the way up here, you know, and there's props all the way up here. It almost looks like it's been laid out for you to parkour, so who knows, it's a little bit weird. Maybe up here there was supposed to be something. God damn it, man, it's just confusing. But one of my personal favourite parts of this unused vertical element is the fact that behind this chain link fence is actually some kind of car park. This is some sort of shell for a multi-storey car park, and clipping behind them you can see that there's kind of an interior, sort of like a very basic structure to the car park, but you can see that it goes up to multiple levels, all of these levels which are not accessible in the release of the game. But ultimately I think it proves that there's just so much more going on with Night City, and especially to do with vertical elements that just never quite made it into the game, and it's a real goddamn shame. As always, guys, let me know what you think on the matter. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I'll catch you lot in a bit.